everyone, and welcome to the C77 Design Awards for 2014. I'm Sarah, and I'm the program manager for the program here in New York City, and we're really excited to bring you our strategy and research honorees right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to the jury, who is live in Chicago, Illinois, USA.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. We had a great jury to research contestants. There were dozens of contestants, both on the student side and the professional side. I was privileged to be the chair of the jury. I'm Larry Keeley, founder and president of Doblin, now part of Deloitte Consulting Worldwide. And with me, I had Kim Erwin, who's a professor at the Institute of Design and the recent author of an amazing book that everybody should own called Communicating the New, that teaches about how you get new ideas to be understood by people who need to understand them. Jeff Semenchuk, who is the Chief of Innovation at Reinventing the Hospital Sector. Todd McCullough, a longtime expert in installing innovation processes and practices in the world's largest corporations, now a principal and founder of McCullough Partners out of Nashville, and also an adjunct professor at the Owen Graduate School of Management at Vanderbilt. Plus, with me today, Tomoko Ichikawa, one of the world's leading information architects and an associate professor, full professor, I should say, in design at IIT's Institute of Design. So Tomoko and I are going to take you through this conversation about the student lead and notables and entrants and winners, and then the professional ones. Tomoko, maybe you could lead us off.
Sure. We're going to start off with the first notable award for the student category, which is called Blastproof. It's a visual mining and prototyping tool simulation for mine action research, and this is by Chris Nat at the Royal College of Art in London, UK. Congratulations. What this study does is it outlines the basic issues that affect land mining clearance operations. And so what Chris has done is mapped out the entire process, the environments that the clearing folks are involved in, the kind of weapons that they have to deal with. This allows us to do is to examine the operations folks to examine where they are in the process, what needs to be done, what has been done, because now this is a very dangerous and costly effort, and oftentimes we don't know about these landmines until we see catastrophic news, mostly affecting local folks and children. And so what Chris did was a really great job in making the complex clearance process easy to understand and making it more manageable and effective for teams overall.
So this is a real-world problem, and Chris, thinking was able to sort of make this incredibly important and dangerous capability crystal clear so that an engineering team going into a field of battle could really easily tell what they had already screened and cleared and what was yet to be done, and to manage the process without undue risk. The second student notable project was Tinker It. This was a team of 3 students, Darren Jean Patterson, Shin Cheng Lin, and Shi Li of Institute of Design. Their work was to take the increasingly abundant world of sort of health sensors and wearable technologies that so many of us are using these days and figure out how to of citizen scientists creating their own data systems and analytic tools. Think of this as a way to take something that goes beyond the prevalence of modern sensors and to create more diverse, more sophisticated wearable technologies that are put into systems that human beings themselves can harness to their own needs. So in some sense, the jury felt this was much like the world of patients like me or moms like me, where people interested in their own world could use a growing number of sophisticated sensors to create the.
What was nice about this is that people could conduct their own experiments and put it up online and share it with other folks, so that other people who may not commonly find solutions online might be able to find a very specific solution for themselves here in the community.
Great.
And the third final student notable project was the Library Compass, subtitled The Strategy for Public Libraries in Times of Digitization, by Andreas Schuster at the TU Munich Industrial Design in Hausen, Germany. We really like this project a lot. Libraries need to be saved. Books need not books and knowledges in the books need to be saved. It's not a complete redesign of a library, but it's about how do we retrofit systems into an existing place that people are already familiar with. So what this does is it's a system that allows a navigation assisting app and a smart iBeacon to work together. The iBeacons would live on the shelves of the libraries, like this one here. And think of it as a local GPS system. Users can go and look for information, both physical as well as digital, so that it becomes seamlessly integrated. They can search for the books in the library, looking for beacons to light their way to help them find the materials that they need physically.
You know, we all are familiar with the history of the Dewey Decimal System and card catalogs. In a world where physical libraries are still going to be important, but where so many of us now over-rely on either Google or Wikipedia to get easy, low-friction answers. This is a world where you walk into a library, you've got some interest, and the library itself starts to tell you where to find the things that are connected to the topic you care about. Extremely cool way to use design, and an extremely important way, potentially, to fix physical libraries so they don't become irrelevant in a changing world. Runner-up in the student category was an exciting project called, and I don't really know how to pronounce this, MLKL, by a single student named Jungdae Kim, studying at the University of the Arts Bremen in Bremen, Germany. And the idea here was to deal with dilapidated physical lands where either maybe there's been a forest fire or serious soil erosion, clearance, something that can cause landslides. And what Jungdae Kim did was to envision a world of a plantable device to strengthen the soil, in a sense to be an extremely important curtain that you would plant into the land, all of what designed with eco-friendly materials that would eventually dissolve into the soil and have seeds impregnated into it, so that as the sort of temporary structural device that's strengthening the soil to prevent the erosion is replaced over time by the roots of the new plants that would grow on it. We've all seen, and the jury commented on this, where more and more catastrophes like the ones that recently happened in the Pacific Northwest in the U.S. or that have been happening in places like Boulder, Colorado or Nantucket can be addressed by an innovation of this type. Extremely exciting. And we also made the connection as a jury to things like surgery that uses sutures that dissolve into your skin, so that the designers only have to sort of show up once, like a surgeon, create a therapeutic intervention, and over time the innovations created by this design team, or at least this design individual, Jungdae Kim, will take over from there.
What I think was really fascinating was the fact that it really acknowledged the different modes project. So it looked beautiful as a structure, and then it also has another life coming afterwards. And taking something that was originally meant for fire and logging damaged areas and being able to extend it to other areas was another way of extending this project as well. Yeah. So our final student runner-up is VisPo, Visual Poetry, by Stephanie Bim out of the University of Technology, Sydney in Sydney, Australia. This is one of the jurors' favorite projects. It's a very beautiful, engaging, interactive application, probably on an iPad, that breaks down the idea of in a way that's very visually lyrical, as poetry should be. Oftentimes I wish I had this tool as a student when I was learning poetry in high school literature. Rather than looking at static books, the interactive and dynamic nature of this app really helps to bring poetry and the learning of it to life. And so, it's a very hard thing to learn. I remember iambic pentameters and this and that, and I just did not get it. But having this type of tool would have probably made me a better student in poetry.
So those of you listening to the podcast should try to do whatever you can do to see this particular idea. The jury all the things we reviewed, this was the one that transcended the category and rose to the level of just poetry itself. It was stunningly beautiful, truly beguiling. The jury had one tiny quibble, which is that we think to be able to use VisPo at the level that this designer anticipated requires a professional every single time to analyze a poem and to put it into the visual form that VisPo demands and deserves. So in a sense, that requires a whole new world of design professionals to help make poetry come alive in a distinctively interesting way. So it's as understanding poetry as it is looking at lava notation to understanding dance. But my goodness, what a beautiful and amazing thing. Like you, Tomoko, I was mystified by poetry when I was younger. It took me till my mother died to really make the commitment after she died to try to reintroduce myself to poetry and to try to understand it. I would have understood it so much sooner and so much more readily with a tool like this one.
And this is actually a field where the digital humanities community is tackling. There's so many visualizations that are based on quantitative information, not much unique visualizations formed around qualitative. It's a different kind of data, so there should be a different kind of visual language for that. And this, I think, is trying to do that very well.
Well, I wish we could introduce a dramatic drum roll here, Tomoko, but it's time to announce the big student winner. And the prize in this case goes to Sean Jalla of North Carolina State University in Raleigh, and his project was called Redesigning the Air Ambulance. So the idea here was to take the air ambulance, so often these days used for trauma victims. Just a block from my house is Northwestern Memorial Hospital's new children's hospital, where, every time I hear an ambulance arriving at that hospital, a great fond good wish that they're saving some child's life, and that's what Sean was dealing with. How to take the air ambulances that are used to transplant patients and rethink them so that they are really purpose-built for that task. And what Sean did in a beautiful way was to tackle some orthodoxies. For instance, and this was something the jury commented on, that he yanked out the co-pilot seat to make a much more useful space for the patient and the care team that's actually trying to care for the patient in flight. He also did a particularly beautiful job of visualizing the physical human factors that the care team would have in caring for a patient while in flight. Rigorous, solution-oriented approach to rethinking the interior design of helicopters, emphasis throughout on being able to communicate the work of the team and his assumptions and the way in which it would improve the results for both the patient and the medical professional team.
Yeah, the visual aspect of the presentation was was very high in standard, describing the full-scale analysis that Sean did, even though it wasn't in the helicopter. Actually use human factors to understand the needs of the space. I'm using things like color coordination to understand the storage aspects of the devices and tools that are needed in an emergency situation, and they were divided by injury type or disease type. So all these different aspects, not just the physical but also the information aspect, made this project a really strong winner.
So we'll move now to the professional category, and let me just begin with a general comment. One thing the jury noticed is that the student projects, by and large, dealt with more serious, more thoughtful, bigger issues that were more complicated, early at some level, and much more interesting. The students tended to tackle those things with no time, no budget, you know how projects are with students, and yet often came to quite elegant and systemic solutions. By and large, the professional solutions are focused much more tightly on a real-world problem, as you'd expect from something sponsored by a corporation. So you get maybe deeper answers about thinner problems. That's an interesting way to think about this. But still, there was excellent work, and we were happy to create a nice selection of both notables, runners-up,
to examine the first notable project in the professional area. And this is by Hamilton Medical, the portable ventilator research by RKS Design in Thousand Oaks, California, USA for Hamilton Medical. The ventilators often seen as life-saving. If you stop breathing, you die. So basically, this is a very, very important tool to have. But if the analysis showed, the research showed that it has to live in many different environments, in many different modes. And what this research team did was look at it when it was at site, at the accident site, what would it need to do? When it was in transit, what would it need to do when it's in the and making it a very caregiver-centric approach to the device. And so we were very much impressed by the way that the analysis took us through these different areas, and the solution, beguilingly simple. It's a very small portable device, but took into consideration many design features so that this ventilator could live in many different environments.
No one would escape the end result for some, sort of remarkable product that comes out of Apple. It still had a slightly dated industrial design feel, at least in my opinion. I don't want to speak for the whole jury on that one. But it's part of this new trend to design. We've all seen how work done by IDEO and other firms like that have taken defibrillators and made them easy enough for people to use that they can be put in lots of places, airplanes and restaurants and so forth. So the idea of taking something that's vitally important and allowing it to be more accessible, more user fit, and better situated to the places where it needs to be used is pretty cool. The next notable one was the Patient Data Explorer by SAP. In this case, the work was done by the Design and Co-Innovation Center in Berlin, Germany, and in conjunction with the National Center for Tumor Diseases. A medical staff to securely analyze clinical data, to be able to do, sort of big data discoveries and pattern recognition, but get to explicit, customized, and personalized interventions for an individual patient's tumor. So think of this as the kind of example of something that all designers should be more aware of. What do we do to learn from the entire world's experience, but how do we customize on the basis of a specific situation what we're doing for this patient right now? And so the idea of using a big data system to make big discoveries, but then to drill down professionals and getting to an individual patient's prescription was pretty cool. Tomoko?
One of the things that really struck me as a communication designer was the elegance, not just the professionalism, but the elegance of the interface itself. Oftentimes, I think it's difficult to design things that are solely for experts and professionals, but making a very clean statement, by making a very clean interface that basically allows the expert to focus in on the tasks that they need to do to get their job done was remarkable. Yeah. Okay, so the third notable by Fee, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, Fee or Fi Scott, MakeWorks in Edinburgh, Scotland. And this was started off as a tour that this designer conducted to find and visit and map all the different factories, makers, workers, suppliers in a given area, and ended up as a MakeWorks directory. So it's a digital tool that actually connects the creative community with the people that are supplying the materials in production. So what this is really great at doing, and in probably every city that has a maker community could have something like this, is it folks that are involved in this particular activity, and they may not be the big names that we tend to go towards, but they could be sort of the smaller mom and pop shops as well, or the crafters that are in the community.
And one of the things that the jury particularly liked about this is as we get to a world where more and more design professionals are able to get their hands on real-world professional equipment, fab labs or 3D printers or other things that allow something that's just notional for the moment to be tangible and real. That's a big inescapable trend in the field of design, and Edinburgh is a really remarkable way to try to make that whole world more accessible and to accelerate it and to give it more depth. Our next notable in the professional side was from Stryker, and it's their hospital support surfaces brand strategy, a way to take their long-standing practice in trying to create the world's best hospital beds and to take it to a brand new level of depth and expertise. So there's a brand new thing that's going on in hospitals, and this is an interesting case where government shifts and regulation and business model shifts firm. So for instance, these days under Obamacare, there is a general practice embraced by most insurance companies to refuse to reimburse hospitals if a patient suffers from bed sores while in the hospital. They just say this is a preventable condition, it's the hospital that screwed up, nobody's going to get reimbursed for that. Well, it turns out the hospital may have screwed up, but what would prevent that from happening, which is the most important thing in the first place, is a smarter bed. And Stryker does this with a combination of a commitment, first off, to make sure it never happens to a patient. That's why it's a bed and the bed process of use that would highlight when the patient needs some kind of intervention. So this eliminates bed sores, and it does a really interesting way of revealing for the hospital such things as, and we hadn't seen this before, materials in the bed that would reflect its own aging. There's a born-on date approach to something newer than a serial number that basically says this is when this bed mattress was made and when it needs to be replaced. So a pretty smart way to take the changing condition in healthcare and innovate through to a better process.
Yeah. And I think new strategy towards a product that has existed, but also trying to find a way to differentiate the lesser cost mattresses against the more higher cost mattresses, help the sales team present their case better. And a lot of the graphics that were on the mattress themselves were not just the corporate name, but there were also instructional information that made the graphics themselves very performance oriented.
Mm-hmm.
The next runner-up, I believe this is the next runner-up, yes. The first runner-up is the Physical Assets for Adolescent Girls by Yves Behar and the Fuse Project. A really important project, finding ways to empower adolescent girls in less developed countries, allowing them to work with items that really make a difference in their lives. So 4 concepts were created as prototypes, and they were taken to Rwanda for an immersion experience, and feedback was given. The idea was to find 4 sort of minimal number of concepts that can make this come true. They were a stovetop that was safe, a low-cost sewing machine, light for nighttime use. So imagine if these 4 items were available to young women in impoverished countries, how these 4 seemingly simple products can make a big change in their lives. And what the team did was focus on the sanitary napkin issue. This has a lot of cultural connotations and isolation that can happen for girls that are menstruating. And so finding a way to make this a more accessible, usable product through innovations in design, in the business model and the distribution model, production methods, concept that we felt was worthy of this position.
And designers listening should know what a wonderful and important problem this is to solve. All around the world, in rural areas, the minute a young girl has her first period, she tends to go home and never return to school. And it's just so important because elsewhere in the world, we never think of this in the United States, there is no access to a truly sterile, truly affordable sanitary pad. and the ability to design that from local indigenous materials and to have it become a successful business in those areas and a cultural really does a good job of paying off the promise that the Nike Foundation has made for some years to try to radically reinvent the world in a way that really empowers young women. That's great. So the final professional runner-up was a project called Making the Giraffe Path. Two designers led this work, Aki Yoshida and Lynette Witter, both from Blacksburg, Virginia. And the client that organized the work was called CLIMB, which is an acronym for City Life is for Moving Bodies. The idea here was to try to figure out how to create events, artifacts, experiences that would connect 5 parks loosely arrayed in northern for the visitors to these parks and the users of this part of Manhattan. It's sort of vaguely analogous to the amazing park that hopefully people listening will know about or have visited called the High Line in Manhattan that has revolutionized the way people think of parks. It goes on for miles and wanders along and has different zones, many of them designed by great designers. In this particular case, the team thinking about sort of doing this specifically drew their insights from nature, from the different climate zones, from the different kinds of things going on in these 5 parks. Trail, and to make it sort of derived from authentic stories locally available.
And the fact that it was targeting neighborhoods in the northern part of Manhattan, which often do not get this kind of attention, was, I think, noteworthy as well. The idea is to help boost the economic aspects of the neighborhood, the sort of safety and attention to the neighborhoods as well. So that was all wrapped up nicely in this project.
It was. Another drum roll. Here's our big one.
The big roll for the professional category, first place, is Pearson's Common Core System of Courses by Possible, Los Angeles in California. You who are in our international audience who don't know about Common Core. This is a new standard, maybe not so new, but is being adopted by a good number of states here in this country. It is a standard to indicate what the students should know by a certain time in their lives, not necessarily how that they should learn them. And so what Pearson has done is sort of reinvented the textbook. No longer cumbersome, no longer heavy books that students need to carry in their backpacks. It's an interactive digital medium and addressing different learning styles, different learning points in their lives. As old textbooks are, acknowledging the fact that there's a new medium that needs to be reinvented for the new generation of students. So thinking about this and the promise behind the work is very, very huge. So as students get more sophisticated in their learning, the tool accommodates and is able to keep up with what the students are learning. One thing that we did notice for sure in the prototypes is that it didn't seem to be an open system where teachers can share ideas with each other, which is what's actually happening now. Teachers create lessons. So in that sense, it's a little bit of a closed system and possibly could reflect better.
But part of the reason why it deserved the big award is that Pearson is literally the global leader in providing textbooks. And what is so commonly the case, and all the designers in our extended video link here should recognize this, what tends to happen is the people that lead a category don't disrupt it. The disruption tends to come from some, guerrilla attack from the outside. And so we were particularly impressed with the humility, the discipline, and the seriousness with which Pearson tried where little kids wouldn't be flopping over on their back because the weight of their backpacks is, 7 times their body weight, and where we would have textbooks that were smarter, that learned to adapt to the different ways in which human beings, as individuals, want to learn, and as teams learn to learn over time. So it may be that the topics you study change all your life, but the ways you study and the tools you use steadily increase, but you can get more familiar with them, and the Common Core can be augmented by a new way to learn. Really nice revolutionary ambition behind you, and clearly a world where they can see that if they don't reinvent textbooks, it's likely to be a disruption that happens to them. So some comments, Tomoko, about our overall process and the strategy and research category?
One of the things as we were going through the various participants' work, and I think this might also be a comment to the Core 77 folks, is it was very difficult to see whether it was a strategy work or whether it was a research work. And some of them had both, some of them had only one side, which was research. But nonetheless, it sort of talks to the integral nature of research behind.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think is useful for everybody sort of thinking about the category, and of course the excellent team at Core 77 to reflect on, is that all of design is getting more professional, is getting more depth, and so it's exciting to be able to focus on the idea of either design strategies that are going to radically alter a field, or design research that will give us a steady stream of better insights and more actionable ways to frame up and engage an important, vital design challenge.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, maybe one other thing. Oh, so the criteria that we used in judging our project to know about. So there were three things that we looked at. One was, is it an important problem to solve? Another one was, did the team use methods or what we were calling tradecraft that was suited to the task, so methodologies behind the rationale? And did they produce a credible and effective result? So those were some of the things that we were definitely looking for with every project.
That's exactly right, Tomoko. One of the things that I think we noticed generally is that many people got these interesting, exciting challenges at the core. But what was useful to understand, and all professional designers should watch for this, is that the tradecraft they were using was really complicated problems. So the jury noticed that one of the things that we often did is said, yeah, this is a great, big, juicy problem, and then we were too often chronically disappointed that the tools didn't meet the task. And that returns the designers to the vague hope that somehow or other their creative insights will be the right ones. So the exciting thing here is to understand that at the core of the professional and the student work in research and strategy is that we're seeing an increasing ability of the design field to deal with complexity, to deal with it with the right tools and the right put to those tasks. That's the inexorable change. We do see a world where Core 77 will have to split out strategy, what did you do to radically change a field, from research, what did you do to get better insights that are actionable and meaningful.
Great.
It was a real pleasure to do this. It was a real pleasure to do it with you, Tomoko.
Thank you. Same here.
And one of the things that I think our whole jury commented on is that it was one of the most interesting days we had spent professionally in many years, because we were able to see so many good ideas and to spend some time, as my great mentor Jay Doblin used to say, cutting cubes out of fog and figuring out which ones rose to the level of something that would help and certainly help to achieve the aims of the students or the professional teams involved. So full thanks to you, Tomoko, to the rest of the jury, and to Core 77 for the chance to think through these important entries and to learn from the work of so many students and professionals all around the world.
Yes, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely impressed with that group of honorees. Seriously, it sounds like we had a lot of really good work this year. So thanks to everyone who entered. Like the jury said, this wouldn't be possible without all the great work that was submitted. And another huge thanks to the jury. I know all these people very impressive backgrounds and are very busy, so we really appreciate the time you took to get together and pick these honorees for us. One final thank you to our presenting sponsor, Intuit, for helping to make these live announcements possible. And again, thanks for tuning in to the Core 77 Design Awards live announcements. We've got several more announcements coming this week, so we hope you tune in for them. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.